So hi everyone and welcome to our September CCDS members meeting. So we've got a lot of items that we're going to be covering basically around what to do now that winter is on its way. And we also have Michael doing a show wrap up. So for those of you who have been unable to attend, he's going to talk a little bit about it and give you some of his impressions as well as discuss some of the blooms that were on the head table. So let me just share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm just going to start with some society news. So the year-end banquet for 2022 is a go. So the date is going to be November 12th, and it's going to be at the usual location at the Stone Cottage Pub in Scarborough. And what we'll be doing is we'll be sending out additional details as we get them all sorted. So, you know, join us for a really good meal, drinks and conversation. And at that same time, the winners will be awarded their prizes from the show. And then if there are new members for the executive team, they'll be nominated and we'll see how the executive stands for 2022. So we're very excited about this. The picture above is one of the last public kind of events that we had with the society. It was a barbecue, a backyard barbecue at one of my favorite people's places. She kindly agreed to host. So it's been a long time. So I'm looking forward to getting this year-end barbecue. Although I suppose the show was the most recent, but that's kind of more of a work get together versus you know, a nice social get together. So that's the first piece of news that we're excited about. And then the second piece is that our November guest speaker is Dave Spencer. So this is a big deal, people. Dave Spencer is going to be discussing the new varieties that he trialed in his garden this year in the UK. And you can see Dave on YouTube. If you just search for Dave Spencer Dahlias, it should take you to his video. And this was recorded by Dave Gillum. And they do it every year. And for me, it's like Christmas when this video comes out, because he takes you through all these new varieties. And then a lot of them you will end up seeing, you know, at Halls of Heaven for purchase in a few years or something. So he also grows for show and he's won a lot of top awards, and his wife grows for cut flowers, and he discusses that aspect of dahlias in his video too. So he's, you know, he covers like every aspect of it. So very interesting guest speaker, and we're very lucky to have him, and we're very happy that he's going to be presenting for us in November. And the date of that, I think, is November 26th, or it's the last Thursday of November. So, you know, definitely, we will definitely promote this one to make sure we get the numbers that we want attending. Okay, and that's it for society news. Does anybody have any questions?
Lori, just on Dave speaking to us.
Yeah.
Is this going to be at an earlier time, or is it, I mean, he's got what, 5 hours difference?
We usually do a 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Oh,
okay.
on a Sunday. We usually do a 2 p.m. on a Sunday. So I'm going to have to check those dates then.
Yeah, that's what I was coming back to.
Yep. I get you, Murray. So it's November 27th. Probably at 2 p.m. That's how we've usually handled it with the other UK presenters. So that's where we'll be standing there. Okay. Hi, Jay. Hi, Joanne.
Hello.
Hi, Vera. Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
Hi, Helene. Hi, Sherry. Oh. Hi, Mary. You know, I now know a lot of these people and what they look like, and it's very nice. It's sometimes it's a little impersonal, but now I've met everyone, and it's very nice now that I know what they look like, and they're not just a name on the screen. So it's excellent. Okay, so the next little bit, now that we've done society news, is Michael, and he's going to take us through a little bit about the show here. So Michael, I'm going to share the screen and you can just tell me when you want me to advance the slides, okay?
Okay.
Here, let me just move this into full screen mode. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, all yours, Michael.
Okay. I think all in all, we had a very good show this year. I definitely wasn't expecting the amount of blooms that we actually got. I thought the numbers would have been way down, but quite a few people turned up and we had a lot of flowers. So it was, all in all, it was very successful. And a huge big thanks from the executive members to everybody who was able to show up and show their flowers, because it really, without those, it would have been, who knows. So yeah, I think a big thanks to all of those who set up and actually helped us to take down the show, because I don't think I've ever seen it being taken down as fast in my life. It was less than 1 hour. The whole place was cleaned out. It was amazing. So thank you to everybody who helped. Even people who weren't even part of the show helped. I think it was Brian and Marilyn's son. I don't know his name. Great help. All the growers, everybody on the executive. It was amazing just to see everybody pull together and take it up and take it down so fast. Wonderful job. So this year we had about 17 exhibitors, and which is not bad, because we had quite a few from Hamilton. Some of the growers just couldn't make it this year, so it was actually a good turnout. There was roughly about 350 entries altogether. So that's in blooms, but in actually bloom count, it's probably a lot more, because there was a lot of threes. A lot. I don't think I've ever seen so many 3 blooms staged ever. It was fantastic. And the best news of all, we had 4 new novice growers. So without the new novice growers, the shows are not going to last. So we need everybody to show up and show. So next one, Laurie, please. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the head table winners. So the first bloom you see here is a double A grown by Mike Parrish, and that was AC Ben, and it was the best double A bloom. Actually, a very good bloom to choose if you want to grow giants. Almost every flower you grow will grow perfectly for you, and the centers last forever. And even if the backs start to fall out of it a little bit, just pull them out and still show them. You can't even tell that you've pulled the back petals out. And the next one is Hamari Gold, which was grown by Rod Field, and it was the best A in the show, and it actually ended up being the best of the best in show, which is chosen from all the head table winners. So it was the best overall flower in the entire show. So well done, Rod. Next one, Laurie, please. So next we have the best B in the show, which is Hilltop Lost Treasure, one of my all-time favorites. I just love the color of this guy. It's a fairly easy one to grow as well. It's it always grows very healthily. If you grow it 6 up, you'll get nice sized blooms just like that right there. And it's quite an easy one to grow. So next one is grown by our all-time favorite lady, Miss Laurie Peplinsky. She had a beautiful Rycroft Zoe. The form in that guy was just simply amazing. You can actually see it from here. It's just a perfect flower. Next one, Laurie, please. So, here we go. I think you're going to see my ugly face too many times, which is kind of not fair. So here we have the best miniature show. It's another favorite of mine, Rycroft Dave's Choice, which gives beautiful, simple, beautiful white flowers with a slight blush, which you get when it's cooler. You won't get it if it's hot, but yeah, it's a fairly easy one to grow too. That was best miniature formal deck. And next one is the best ball in the show, which was grown by Marilyn and Brian Hill, and it's a Jessie G. I believe that's a really old variety too, and it's a good one to grow. It's a hard one to beat. It's a really, really good form on it. Next one, Laurie, please. So here we have the best water lily, and of course it's Pam Howden. If you're going to grow dahlias or water lilies for show, stick with Pam Howden. It will always win. It doesn't matter what other variety shows up. Pam Howden will always win best water lily. It's spectacular. And of course we have the best of the other types, which included collarets, orchids, and all the single guys. This one was chosen, which is Rembrandt. And I think I heard Mike Parrish say that it's very, very hard to get a Rembrandt that has a perfectly formed flower. It has lots of flowers. It's a very small growing plant, about only a foot high, but this little flower was stunning. It was perfect in every way. So that actually, in those both those winners were Mike Parrish's. Next one, Laurie. So this is my favorite part. I love to see new novices come to the show. This was best novice in show, grown by Jay Veghela. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but it was a really, really nice Elsie Houston. Actually, there was quite a few really nice novice flowers growing this year. This was chosen as the best one. It was very good. And the other picture we have Laurie again with her beautiful new seedling. I think it's either a little small ball or a formal deck. I'm not quite sure, but it was chosen as best seedling this year. And there was quite a few seedlings this year to choose from. And Laurie's was best seedling this year. And I do believe it's a 2021 seedling, I think. Next one, Laurie, please. So I told you you're going to see my ugly mug more than once. So here we have the best three blooms in show, which was grown by me, and it is Mary's Jomanda. It was actually my first year growing this flower, and I was so impressed by the form of this flower. I've never grown it before, and I think I will always be growing this one now because it's just beautiful. And it's fairly easy to grow as well. If you're going to grow it about 12 up. That means 12 stems up to it. It'll keep the flowers just about the right size for you. If you grow less, they'll get too big. And the best five is a new variety that I shipped in from England last year called Rycroft Jill. It's a ball dahlia. It's a lovely shade of orange. I actually didn't like it when it first started to flower. The first few flowers, I wasn't impressed. But as it grew, I got really impressed with it. It's a very strong growing dahlia. You have to grow it a lot of stems up. I do believe it's something like 16 stems up just for it to keep its nice ball size. So you do get a lot of choice on this one. And every single flower is just, the form is beautiful. So that was best five in the show as well. And I have to say, the amount of three blooms we had this year was incredible. I think there must have been at least 50 or 60 sets of three. It was crazy. I've never seen it. It was wonderful to see. Next one, Laurie. And of course, this thing, I don't know what Laurie's feeding these things, because this thing was massive. I've never seen a Lewis White this big. I'm going to say it was a good 14 inches. It was massive. And it of course it won biggest bloom in the show, grown by Laurie again. Great job, Laurie. I have no idea how you got that size. It was wonderful bloom. Next one, Laurie. So I'm trying to think. I'm going to add a couple of new classes next year in the show. I'm going to revamp the entire schedule completely, I think. And I would like, if anyone has any suggestions about adding different classes into the show, we'd love to hear from you. It doesn't matter what it is, just, send in your suggestions. And next year I'm going to add not only the head table winners, but more prizes. There's going to be a king of the show, a queen of the show, a prince of the show, and a princess of the show, which will add more money awards. If you get to the head table, it'll also add, like, head table winners get awards, plus this will give you more awards. And the cash prizes for those will be determined this coming year, I guess, for next year. And that little table of flowers there that was put together perfectly for the sale by Laurie's daughter. And I think Brittany LePage helped in assembling all those two. We didn't quite sell that many, but we left them for the people at the church. And the next day, people at the church just loved them. So they went to good homes. They weren't dumped. They definitely went to good homes. So I say a big round of applause to everybody who was involved in the show. From me, thank you very much. Your help was very, very much appreciated. And next year, we got to make it bigger. Love the new location, but we've got to make it bigger. I think that's it.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, the show was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it was nice to meet people that I hadn't seen their faces before. So that was really excellent.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So maybe we can start, Murray. Do you think you could present now, and then we'll round off the meeting with the chrysanthemums and what people are doing with those, put them away for the winter.
Sure, we can do that. We just have to get you to transfer the authority for me to use my screen there, Laurie.
Oh yeah, yep. Let me see. Let me find where that is. Okay, let me just find you in participants. Murray.
I'm glad you know what you're doing. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, can you share now, Murray?
Let me try. Okay, can you see that?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, now try.
Okay. How about now? It says I'm the host now.
Yep. So can you try sharing your screen?
Oh, just a second. End show. And we get back onto the other screen here. It's disappeared. Okay, share screen. There we go, I think.
Yep.
How about
it's
that?
coming, Murray. Yep.
Okay.
There it is. Yep.
Okay,
Just
let me go back
do
here.
presentation mode and you're all set.
We just have to make it big. There we go. See that okay? Nice and big.
Just wait. Yep. It's going. You're good.
Okay. I'm going to have to apologize to start off with. I got a bit of a tickle in my throat, but I'm going to ask you to put up with me having a little bit of a throat clearing every now and again. In any case, the presentation that we did last year was on September the 30th. This is now one day before that, but we're going to be going over this digging and storing dahlias. It's kind of interesting. I took a look at all the names on the screen here, and I think I'm talking to the experts. There might be the occasional person who might have need of what I have to say here, but basically what I'm going to be covering here is that we're going to have we got to start with a good plan of how you're going to do the basic dig. As we've heard from Lori, she's going to do it with a chainsaw. I hope others are going to wind up being a little bit more gentle. Anyway, get all your tools and equipment maintained and set up. Get your labels and topping and digging and cleaning, sectioning, the whole thing. Anyway, once we're done here with the process, there'll be a question and answer period that you can come back and buttonhole me for what I didn't say at the right time. Anyway, the idea, of course, is to start early. I've always said that late starts are kind of a problem if you have lots and lots. Amazing how to unplug the thing solves the noise. In any case, if you get into it and if you have too many, you're going to have very, very cold hands by the time you actually finish up. I hear that Kat's already started. I have not started the dig process, but I've got about 80 already chopped back. Anyway, the next step though is to complete any crop observations. You should always go through the crop and say, okay, fine. What did I like about this? What did I not like about this? And make any notes that perhaps you want to exit a certain cultivar, or you want to have more of a certain cultivar in following years. Make sure that if you're doing any horse trading, it's usually a good idea to have all of your pictures well taken and well documented so that you can call them up very, very quickly. Now, as far as the plans for the excess blooms are concerned, usually how I handle that is I cut them off and I'd put them out in a tote box at the road with a sign saying, please help yourself. I do that because of the fact that I really do have a problem whacking a plant that's got all kinds of great flowers on it. But if I cut all the flowers off it and I'm just seeing a green plant, it makes it much easier to reduce the greens down to the stake. Just happens to be one of the ways that I accomplish a difficult part of the process. Now, it's not a bad idea to have somebody else come in and take a peek at the crop as well. This is obviously Lori, Michael, and Mason. We were walking through the patch this past Sunday. It was raining, so everybody had umbrellas. But this was the permanent part of the garden, but we also had a chance to go through the seedling patch. And it was really very interesting to wind up hearing the feedback that some of the ones that I had looked at and had decided to pass over, they identified as being a good probable one to save, and they gave the reasons for saving. So if you see something of an attribute that you'd like to wind up getting into your breeding plan, you might be saving something that might not be a plant that's just ideal for show, but it might be okay for making one of another type that has the right kind of attributes you're looking for. Also had a visit from Alex and Sharon today. And I thought it was kind of funny here that they wound up picking up Louis White as the largest, following the comments that Michael made about Lori's 14-inch Louis for the show. This was the only one that I had left. I had 6 plants, and I had told people when they were going through, and I give permission, by the way, for people to go through and do their own cutting. And I say, make sure that you leave one decent flower on each plant. Well, that apparently in somebody's mind has translated into, well, if there's 6 plants there, as long as I leave one bloom, I'm in okay territory. Well, it wasn't quite my intention, but you know, we're past the show, so it should be okay. Anyway, it was nice to see Alex and Sharon come out today. Now, for the need, this is just a list here. You can read them for yourself here, but knives, shears, extra labels, marker, what you're going to store them in. You have to have a spot where you can get these dried out. And that's what I mean by curing. I mean, professionally dried. You need a hose for washing, a cutting table. I've managed to get my hands on a great big piece of plastic for doing the cutting on this year. I got it from my son. He was they were replacing the big cutting boards in the store. So that, 3 feet square is a nice cutting board, and some of them are like 3 foot by 6 foot. Anyway, you're going to need shovels, forks, spades, whatever you use to dig the stuff out, just to get it all right by. I usually use a fork for digging, but it depends on where I am in the garden. If I have hard soil, sometimes it's going to be a bit too much for the strength of the handle of the fork. But if your soil is really good, a fork should wind up being sufficient for lifting them out of the ground. I have the loppers there for cutting off the big stems. They're just another mess of tools that can be used. I don't use the most of them, but it's kind of nice to have a bit of a nice song going while you're going there. A little bit of 3-in-1 silicone lube to keep all your tools moving nicely. And you can see right here, that's the diamond sharpening stone that I use to keep everything with a nice edge on it. The drill here is, if you're going to leave the tuber clump intact, sometimes, well, you can turn it upside down for one, but if you cut it off and intend to leave it in the ground, some people get concerned about water building up in the stem. Well, water in the stem isn't necessarily from the rain coming in the top. If you remember, for those of you who have done the cutting off beforehand, you'll find that the stem by itself is actually often full of water. So putting a cap over the top of it, or a pop can or some such, isn't going to wind up doing an awful lot. But what does good is if you take a small, long drill bit like you see here, you can drill straight down through and right into the ground underneath. So any water that comes in then would have a chance to drain right out of the bottom. So that's just a choice. If you don't want to have the water in the stem, that's an easy way to limit that. This is just the bleach that you put in the water, the markers, the tags, and all that kind of stuff, and the wires to attach it to the stems. Now, there's a lot of different ideas on how you should store them. Like obviously there's 6 different choices here. If I go to the bottom left and say dry earth, I had a chap explain how he put all of his stuff away in the basement. He said he put them all in pots that would be about 5 pounds or thereabouts. And he cheerfully told us that his wife's job was to carry all these pots down the stairs into the basement. And he had something like 1,200 pots or some damn thing. I don't know how, I don't know how he stayed married, but that was kind of a dodgy thing to do. In any case, shredded paper. There's a number of people that do this. I don't particularly like it. I don't recommend it. Unless your storage area is a fairly high and constant high humidity level. Now, that's perhaps sounds counterintuitive, but like you don't want the dampness to actually dampen the paper, because then it won't hold anything up. And really, you want it to be kept up out of any moisture that happens to be in the bottom of the pot. Shredded paper does not do a very good job of it, although it happens to be a fairly readily available and fairly cheap source. But on the other hand, I guess in the days of not having any newspapers, you might have to go out and buy some newsprint or something to rip up. I don't know. Anyway, shredded leaves is another one, and that's not actually all that bad, but you want to make sure that they're dry. You don't want the ones just recently dug out from a pile of damp leaves that will just help rot your tubers. Going to the top left, vermiculite is a good choice. It's actually one that's the most foolproof. And I say that because most people put their tubers away before they're properly aged or cured, or whatever term you want to use. When I put stuff away, I do it in the right-hand side top. I put it away typically in wood shavings in the type of a pot that you would see there. I'd put some shavings in the bottom, put the wet tubers in the middle, put more shavings in on top, more tubers in, and then make sure that the top is all covered with the shavings as well. that has worked very successful for me. And by the numbers, my basement is pretty much a constant 60 degrees and 50% relative humidity. When you start picking the spots where you're putting your tubers for storage, it's the numbers that make the difference. If somebody says, can I store in such and such a spot? You say, well, I don't know. You don't know because you don't know the actual numbers of the humidity and the temperature. Ideally, it's like what you would find in an old-fashioned root cellar. I'm hoping that some of you are able to lay claim to understanding what I'm saying here. Not everybody knows what a root cellar is and feels like. The center top is peat moss. Now, right out of the bag to start off with, peat moss tends to be a little bit more humid than what it becomes after the bag is open for a week or so. So if it's opened right away and used right away, you might get it to work fine for a year. On the other hand, if it's been open for a long period of time, you might have to very, very lightly moisten it, but it does have a propensity for dehydrating the tubers as you put them in it. Now, it's possible, it's been used before by many people swear by it, but just to know that it's not what I would call an ideal. I would rather use chainsaw sawdust. I don't want to use fine sawdust like you would have like from a table saw. This is looking at an early planting, and you can see the straw and the mulch. The straw is on the walkways, and it's cedar mulch around the plants, and that's on top of landscape fabric. To get down there, you have to ideally get this stuff gathered up and get it out of the way. You could remove the straw and the mulch, whatever, if you have it, but you have to make sure that you have your stumps of the stems well identified, or else you completely lose track of what's what. You'll notice that there's 4 rows in there, and then when I show you what this year's flowers look like as I look outside even today, you'll find that there are 6 rows here. I kind of did some chicanery here. I kind of moved the 1 row on the outer side over a little bit towards the grassy field, and the walkway here was about another 4 feet wider in past. But anyway, that's my side garden. This is the second patch that Lori and Michael and Madison helped plant back when we had some medical delays, medical issues in the family. So I really appreciated that help, or I'd never have gotten it in. That's what I greet when I'm greeted with when I step out onto my side porch now. I just think that's just a lovely way to sit out there and have a coffee. Of course, these days you almost have to have your mucklucks on. It was 2 degrees this morning here in Whitby, which is the coldest that it's been so far, but it's going to be single digits for the next week. And then after that, it's all double digits. So I'm going to kind of assume that once this week is over, that's kind of the start of Indian summer. But I have to dig, obviously, just like Kat does, because of the volume. I figure it'll take about a month's work. This is the other garden. There's nothing the same in this. This is the other half. And that's where most of the early planting was done. It's just lovely to be out there at this point. Anyway, looking at cutting the plants down and everything else, this is looking at it like right from on top of landscape fabric and the walkways. And you can't see tags on all of them. You can, however, see a tag right there. That's what you do. And then you wind up loosening the ties off. You can see the ties are right here. It's flat mule tape or slick tape that the telephone companies use for pulling in duct or pulling it through duct structure when they want to pull in cables. It's really lovely to get a hold of. They only ever use that product once and then they toss it out. But there's 2 different versions of that. One is an 1,800-pound test line and one is a 2,500-pound test line. So there ain't nothing ever going to break that as far as the weight of a dahlia is concerned, and it remains soft for years. Like some of the stuff I've been using for in excess of 20 years, and it's still usable. Just gets a little crustier as time goes on. But anyway, that mulch on there, I would blow that out of the way, and I'd use a leaf to do that. But have to know that when you're using a leaf blower, it kind of goes up in the air, and any flowers that you have back there are going to have all this cedar dust all over them as well. So you use it advisedly. When digging it up, you can be after frost or you can be for frost, as long as your plants have roughly 120 days in the ground. You can dig them up. This is just a sample of one that's been dug up here. This is not ideal ground. I want you to see that. And this is when I was using a square-edged spade more often than using the fork. But that was not a very productive root either, by the way, but at least you have a chance to see what the root looks like. And the fact that the soil there really is too much clay. It needs both leaf matter, like organic matter or some kind like that, or a manure of some kind. And the permanent way of making it clay or like a clay loam is what you want. And you have to add sand. And that's builder's sand. It's a granite sand. It's not the type of sand that typically is found in Pacific Northwest areas, which I think is more towards the limestone side. It needs to be a good granite type of sand that you put in there, and that will keep it loose and friable. See here that some of those roots are really quite long. So if you're doing weed removal, remember that the roots do get out right into the walkways and underneath. So don't dig down very deep, or you will cut off some of those tap roots. This lopper is being used to shorten the greens on the plant. That was a long time ago because it's called a white dinner plate. And I don't like using the term dinner plate anymore. I haven't for about 50, 20 years. So in any case, the lesson there is that you can use loppers to cut the top off, and then you can continue on washing off, trimming, and all that kind of stuff to get the tubers all reduced down to storage size. Now, I do still grow Arabian Night, but this is the last year, I believe, that I'll be doing that. The other names in there I don't grow, haven't grown for a long time. But just gather them all up, and you can move all these to the washing station and the cutting board. So this is freshly dug. And so all of the hairy roots and the roots that don't look like they've got a bulb up against the main stem, you cut them off. I mean, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to grow. They're just feeder roots. There's not really much on that one that's going to wind up doing a growth anyway. I would be hoping for something. This is one of these challenging ones to find out where it's going to grow a shoot from. But in any case, this area right here is the mother tuber. You can see it dark. It's a different color. All the other stuff, it tends to be lighter. So you would cut this off right close to the stem, and then you would cut those off up there and section this part down here. Sometimes it's just a matter of just leaving it the way it is or cutting it in half. That's kind of your call, but all of this fine roots and everything else, you can get them all chopped off and get them out of the way. Now, see, there's the same root all trimmed off. You can see the mother root and all of the small bits cut off, and we just have to snip off more of the stem. The stem needs to be reduced down just about as far as you can reduce it down. Now, the reason being is that's the first part that's going to rot and bridge, and if it just keeps on going, it'll go right through the area where the new shoots will happen and right down into the tuber. And after that, you got just material there that you can just give a toss because it'll never grow. It's gone down through the area where the shoots are. That's just now completely separated out, and you get all of that dross there in the center, get it off over the top, and you could start storing in the tubers. And there's it all cleaned up a little bit. And this happens to be a seedling. And I don't have that seedling anymore. That was basically distributed to people who like color in their garden, but not for show. So you don't have to necessarily throw it out unless it's really bad, but I have had some really bad ones. And anyway, this was pretty good. You see, not all of them are separated. There's some of these ones that are left as two together. I just leave them like that. And that, by the way, would all go into one bag eventually with shavings, and it would be sealed in plastic. You'll get a chance. there's a picture of using snips to cut off the mother tuber. And you can see that there are 4 other tubers in there that were new. Nothing of that mother tuber will be saved, and the stem will be snipped down, and then you just straight through the stem from up top, and that will slice those into 4 equal parts, and you'll have 4 separate tubers that you can wash up and throw in for storage. Now, not everybody grows in pots. This particular one was. That great big top was grown in a 4-inch pot. That's a deep pot. Now, just a word about this. You don't have to bury these in the ground. You can let them sit on top of the ground as long as they're right touching each other, side to side. They can be in a tray, but you don't want to have it up off the ground because it's like tomatoes. Like when you're growing tomatoes in a fabric bag, most people who do that realize that you have to thoroughly dampen the ground underneath where you then set this particular bag. If you don't do that, you don't have a good water connection between the bag itself and the ground. And you need that in order to wind up making sure that your plants keep properly hydrated. So if you have something underneath this, make sure it's not up like in a crate, for example. Put it right down on the ground is the best way to grow it, right cheek by jowl. Now there's seeing the roots coming out of the 4.5-inch pot. You can see how that's the deep type. You do have to snip all of those bottom roots off there to get it out of the pot, but that's not a great big problem. Most of the business you can see inside like that. And if you, that is a bit of a challenge to try to figure out how to section that one. But really, once you snip off all the small bits all over the bottom and get the hose going inside there, you can do a credible job. And remember, this is really meant to be a source of shoots for growing from cuttings next year, more than growing as a separate tuber in the ground. There's some of the tools that I'm using. Lori has found that red handle one. It's a pipe cutter, but it's ratcheting pipe cutter. If your grip isn't all that strong, you'll find that something like that will be very helpful. She can speak to that more than I, but that's meant for cutting like ABS or PVC type small pipes. I usually use the shears on the right. Those are called root shears, and they're available through Lee Valley for, I don't know, 20 bucks or something like that. But I've got about 3 pair of those. I had one smaller pair and one smallest pair. The smallest one, really, it wasn't really all that great. In fact, this is the one that I would recommend. One size is ideal for almost all the work. Now, but I've also transitioned to using an X-Acto knife type setup, like those break-off knives are pretty handy for doing it, but you really have to watch. Always cut away from the body and below eye level. Now, for the tuber shapes, here's just a Western Spanish Dancer has the round types. If you were looking for the longer types, Mary's Jomanda tends to wind up having a lot of pencil-sized, like just slightly larger than HB pencils or 2H pencils, something like that. And they're red. These ones are all the typical brownish or whitish brown, and these are smaller. But some of them are longer. This is one that's in between. I no longer grow this one either, but Calamity Shane was like a variegated pink and purple. But you can see the difference in the shapes all on the one plant. Like some of them are short and stubby, some of them are long. Doesn't matter. They'll still grow a plant equally. Now, as far as volume is concerned, a Kamado Messenger was one that grows very, very nice roots, and really an awful lot of them. I no longer grow Kamado Messenger because ones like Holly Hill Cotton Candy have better growth habits. They have a stronger stem. They hold up the top a lot better. And I actually have one seedling that I'm going to be trying to save for next year that one of the judges at the show came back and was impressed with it. It looked very much like a cotton candy, but it had gone open in the time that I had picked and by the time it was judged, so that it got no prize at all because, you know, when it's supposed to be fully doubled, you got to follow the rules. It's a technicality. So if you're about 38, 40 degrees, 45 degrees, and a little bit of humidity, that's really the ideal. You don't want these things to get low in humidity because you will see them dehydrate. They'll go like a prune. Now, but you can offset that somewhat by when you put them into storage. You can put them into storage as they're properly dried or cured. Put them in plastic bags, and at that point, the humidity is guaranteed in the bag. It will not drain out of the bag because it's got no holes in it. And if you maintain the temperature, you won't get the moisture condensing on the inside of the bag. That is an issue. If your temperature rises and falls, you will get the moisture on the bag, and then that will be the start of the conditions to cause rot or mold or whatever. But if you can keep that temperature level, like if you put it inside a styrofoam cooler, like what Carolyn Cutt used to do down in Hamilton, and I think Jim Hall used to do that in Hamilton as well. For me, I just put it inside a styrofoam grape box, which you'll see later on here. And my basement is too warm by most people's standards, but I've done it fine for 20 years. It's 60 Fahrenheit and 50% relative humidity, but you always got to go back to the numbers. If people say, look, can I store it in my my pump shed, or can I store it in the garage? Well, you can, as long as you have nobody opening the garage door. If you always park in the driveway and use it for a shed, then you probably can, because most garages don't quite freeze. But if you crack it open in the morning, drive to work and come back at night, drive in and shut the door, you don't have any more tubers because freezing is lost. So that's what I put them in. It's a styrofoam grape box. I've got about 60 of those things kicking around. And you can see you got to keep the tags on them from the outside. That's shavings on the inside. The amount of shavings for curing tends to be a bit
That's
higher.
my dahlia
Uh,
monthly meeting. It's about storied dahlias.
Sorry, Lori, can you mute, please?
anyway, the amount of shavings going into the bag, it's about 60% shavings and about 40% tuber mass. It's higher than that in shavings when I'm going through the curing process. So when I take it from the curing pots and put them into their final storage, I'll wind up having about a 30%, 20% surplus of shavings when I put them away. I don't want to take up all that space in the styrofoam crates with extra storage, and it works fine. So close it up, and I got the names on the box, and I found out that this was really not a good plan, because when I stacked these boxes up 10 deep, I had absolutely no idea where to look for them. So then I started putting the information down here on the end of the box and on the bottom, because you could take the top off and set it down and maybe have 2 or 3 boxes open, and you say, which box lid do I put back on which individual crate? So the bottom is the right place to put it. And if you want to use them year after year, you can just put some painter's tape or some duct tape or something over the previous writing, or rip off the previous duct tape, and they just keep on using them year after year after year. So that way you can help to find them when you're going to crack them open in the spring. Now, I just say until it's all over, everybody who is within traveling distance is quite welcome to come and see the flowers out there. It is kind of a destination in the minds of most people that have been out there. This is Ken and Doris Prentice. He's our financial guy for our investments. They were out there wandering through the garden, and one of his comments was, how come you don't have any weeds in your garden? Well, see, I put down landscape fabric, which is a weed suppressant, and then I put the mulch on the top, and then I straw the aisleway. I do have a few weeds to take out, but I really don't have much interest in pulling weeds. I'd rather work on the plant. So that's what I do. You have to invest a little bit in it, but it saves you an awful lot of work when you start dealing with these kind of numbers. Thanks for watching. There's a couple of, the upper one is a seedling this year, and this one down here is Sandy Ashomi. Now, if you remember, Sandy Bowley doing her presentation. If you've been following along with us, this is one of her introductions. I've had this one for probably 10 years or better. So we're down to Q&A, so we can open back up for questions. Thanks for everybody for listening, even though you knew all this stuff. Most of you knew all this stuff ahead of time anyway, but I hope there was a little nugget in there somewhere that you could enjoy taking away.
Hey, Murray, I'm just wondering if you can clarify the term curing.
Oh, well, curing is just an elongated drying process. All you're trying to do is to replicate the natural process. Like if you could imagine where these things came from, somewhere down in Central America, the weather there changes so that the rainy season stops and the soil tends to dry out. And if they didn't have a defense mechanism, they would dry up and they'd be dead. But curing, they go into hibernation because you don't have enough water for the growing conditions. So that's what you're trying to replicate when you're lifting the tubers. You don't want them to have full exposure to the air because they will dry out, like I said. But if you lift them from the growing conditions and put them into conditions that are quite similar to very dry soil, then the protection that's built into these plants will shut down the transfer of moisture from the soil into the tuber, or from the tuber into the soil if it's too wet. It will shut that down, and the skin is compared for new potatoes and old potatoes. The old potato skin is what you're looking for going into storage, and it won't change that much in color, but it will change so that you can probably write on the outside of them with a Sharpie. And sometimes you'll slide the skin, sometimes you won't. But if you're careful, you can write on the outside of them. That's the spot where you can now put them into storage. Now, I've said between 3 to 6 weeks is fine. This past year, I didn't really get them into proper storage until probably March. So really, it was talking months that they were sitting there in the pots, and the pots were stacked. So there's very little contact with air, and the fact that there's humid shavings in there, that does not give the tubers the feeling of growing conditions. So that's when it goes back into hibernation. That's what I refer to as curing.
Yeah, so basically your process is you dig them up, you wash them out, wash them off, you cut them up, and that's when you put them in those pots with the wood shavings that you were describing.
That's correct.
When they're sitting for a couple of weeks in those wood shaving conditions, that's when the curing process happens. After that, then you can put it in plastic bags with vermiculite and store them, because they've cured, they've developed that thick skin, like you were saying.
I also see a question on here about what kind of plastic bags do you use. It doesn't have to be any sort of exotic plastic bag. I go to a store and get those, I think it's about 5,000 bags in 2 different rolls. It's all in one box. It's about $30 or something like that. And it's nothing more and nothing less than really a bread bag. But when the stuff goes in there, the top is tied, or it's knotted, and then I wind up putting the wire for the tag on the outside of it and toss them into the box. Now, sometimes it's opened up a little bit. Like if you do that, you can't get rid of all the air in the bag. So sometimes if I'm trying to pack a little bit more in, I'll go back over the bags and just poke it ever so slightly with the point of a knife, and just to get the air to release a little bit, and I can shove them close together. You can hear the air hissing out of the bags, and I can get an extra bag or 2 in the box. That doesn't really open the bag up as far as any outside moisture is concerned. Now, I see, Kat, you're saying that they don't have those shears anymore. I looked up and I tried looking under Japanese shears. I tried looking up under pruning shears and all this kind of stuff. But where I wound up finding them, and it's not as obvious, but they are called root shears.
Oh.
Now, I'm not sure whether if you're near a computer there to see whether or not Lee Valley shows root shears, and it's the largest of them that these are. I'm fortunate to have 3 pairs of them right now. You can also get some other shears as well. And the name of them is escaping me, but it's got a white handle and a red handle. But they're a lighter grade. And they work fine as long as the tuber isn't too tough. But I find them a little bit low in strength. So, you know, it's nice on the hands, but it has limitations that the other shears don't have. But sometimes you just have to use like a chisel and hammer. Like it just gets down to that. You have to use whatever works to get your job done.
So everyone, you know, feel free to come off mute and feel free to ask your questions, okay? It's a nice informal kind of thing here. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi.
go ahead, Jay.
Thank you, Marie. It was really good to learn from all of experts. Have a question on the curing part. What I learned is like when you store it in like after curing, let's say I haven't done it. Like normally I just dry the tuber and store it in the basement.
Yeah, that's
But
your
that
problem.
Yes, so that basement it's not it's a heated basement. So I would say in centigrade it's like at least 20 to
Yeah, that's your problem
22.
too, right, Murray?
Well,
Now-
this is one of these cases of where it's up to you to know the numbers. Yes, there are many basements that will store these fine. And each basement has its own separate benefits and own separate challenges. There are some basements, Jay, that don't have insulation on the outside walls. I have ran into issues with that where I stored them for a few years in a Rubbermaid tote. And what I found was that on a cold night, these were not watertight, not airtight. And the coolness at that side would the condensation of the water in the air would come up against the inside closest to the wall, and the water would run down. It would do this repeatedly. So when I tried to get them out in the spring, there was about a half an inch to an inch of water in the bottom of the tote box. It was so wet inside that I had 14-inch sprouts on some of the shoots or some of the tubers. And basically half of what I had in the box was rotten. So if you simply had the boxes like insulated, like say, even like a corrugated cardboard, not straight cardboard, but corrugated, it gives you the insulating effect. And if you leave it off the wall by about 6 inches, it's much better. And even better still, if you put like an inch styrofoam sheet inside the outside uninsulated wall, so you insulate it, and then you could put your totes right up against it, and then you have no problem at all, given if the rest of the stuff is okay. So every situation has its own things to work out.
I see. So that's the primary thing to store. So I already have bought those styrofoam boxes, which are medical boxes.
Yes.
Now, like I'm trying to find the solution that I have like a cold storage. I just want to know what is if I'm storing it in a styrofoam box with a sealed plastic bag or maybe Ziploc, okay, store it in the same way as you already explained. Would it be better idea to, instead of having it in a basement, store it in a cold storage, which is not heated one? It's a basement, but not heated one.
This is like underneath your, like this is just the area underneath your porches or whatever, is it?
Exactly.
Yep.
Would it be safer?
Well, it comes back to, you need to have some temperature control there, because some of those, there are vents in them, and sometimes the vents need to be shut off in deepest cold. And at no point should you ever have your tote, even if it's in an insulated box, right up against the outside wall. Put it against the inside wall, and you probably have a pretty good chance of having it there. But you can put a remote sensor in there, and when it drops below a certain spot, you can see it on your remote reader. It's like those gadgets, the indoor outdoor settings. You could put your outdoor setting in your cold space, and basically you watch it. And some of them will actually be able to be set up so that it'll give you a phone indication if it falls below a certain level. But if
You
you
know
can't
what I
let,
would do, Jay, is I wouldn't put all my, what do you call, what's that saying? Something
your eggs
all
in
in
one
the
basket?
same. Yeah,
Ah.
don't put all your eggs in the same basket. You
Mhm.
should be experimenting with different conditions. Split your tubers up for each variety, split them up into 3 different groups maybe, and try your 3 different conditions or something, and then see in which ones your tubers come out the best. You're still at the experimenting phase. We all had to go through that.
Right.
At one point, I stored half of my tubers at home and half of my tubers at my daughter's place. And it was in a cold room, and turned out that both of them survived just fine. But I had no idea what the numbers were in the remote basement. It was split. So one or the other was likely to survive, and that was good enough at the time. I just want better now.
Yeah, I mean, previously with the same sport, where it's the 22-degree temperature in the basement, I just very first year when I started Dahlia, I just dig up, not washing anything, keep it as it is in the soil, put it in a cardboard box. Next year it was all good, nothing.
Well,
I
maybe
didn't.
that's your process. Very easy. Done.
It's easy, but next year is again problem, like to dividing again, like cleaning, and that's a challenge. So that's why I want to start with the cleaning. Like last 2 to 3 years, I started washing it and storing it, but last year was like almost I lost 40% of my tubers.
If you're not going to split them, Jay, leaving the soil on isn't a bad idea, because that's close to, that's probably as close as what you're going to get to replicating the Central America type conditions. But yeah, you've got an issue in the spring. Like at some point in time, you're going to have to wash it off or scrub it off. Some people don't wash it. They want to take it off with poking and prodding and with small brushes and all this kind of stuff. And if you've got a few to do, that's fine. If you've got 50 or more, that is just one onerous type of job. You're better to wash it off and store it as I've described. But it's there's a benefit to leaving soil on that while you're digging. I've had friends come along and help me dig, and they try to come up and knock all the soil off. And in the process, what I found was either the necks got broken or the tubers got broken. And if you're going to be moving stuff around, don't get in a hurry to take all that soil off until you're right over at the stand. If you're doing the cutting and washing, leave the soil on until you get over there. That helps to protect the transit part of the job.
I see. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? You work about curing. Can you cure in vermiculite and then store in it? Like put them in a big plastic bag to cure them for 2 or 3 weeks, but then do the storing in the same way?
If you're storing in vermiculite, let's just say that you have to be careful of how much. It's more foolproof, okay? If you put them away too soon. But if you put 1 tuber in a 2-gallon pot, for example, it'll dehydrate. If you put 15 tubers in the same size of a pot, they'll probably do just fine. But vermiculite will hold moisture. Now, see, most people put them away too early in the process without them being properly cured, and the excess moisture that comes off them will go into the vermiculite, and it will stay in the vermiculite. And a lot of people don't even close the top. Some people do. They put them in a shoebox and put the lid back on. Most people do put the lid back on, and then they poke holes in the side. I don't know why they do all that. If you get it properly cured to start off with, you don't have to do any of that. You just put it right in a plastic bag and let it keep its own little cloud of humidity inside, and it doesn't change. But if you haven't got them cured and you put them away right away in shavings, your chances of success are less than if you put it into the vermiculite.
Because they'll rot? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they can rot. And I see, vermiculite isn't a biological medium. It won't itself cause rot, and it won't give you any problem with, like say the wood shavings. Like I use pine all the time, and it can actually start decomposing if it's too wet in the bag itself, which means it was put away too damn wet. Right down to the truth of the matter. But if it starts to get too wet, then you can actually raise the chance of seeing tuber rot in the bag. Now, tuber rot in the bag is another thing that a lot of people who fertilize very heavily during the show season, it's not a good thing, because it might not be a failure of your storage methods. It might be a cultivation issue. So if you were growing for show and fertilizing the life out of these things, and you want, a 10-inch plant to become a 14-inch plant, when you're done at the end of the season, I think it was Jim Hall that coined the phrase, just toss them over the wall. Really, your chances of saving something that's been utterly jacked up for show, it reduces your chances of saving the tuber successfully. So you're better to have it in a pot tuber somewhere, or another area of the garden where you put the same cultivar in there and basically leave it to its own devices to grow. And it'll be a wiry little survivor that will be very generous with you where it comes to your storage methods, so that you can keep the cultivar. So you can go that route too if you want.
Just a corollary to that, last year I dug mine all up, I washed them off, and then I dried them out. We had I'm in Ottawa, a lot of days of warm sun. Like I didn't cure them. Then I just stored them in the vermiculite in one of those, like a tomato crate in a plastic bag, and then kind of sealed the top. And I had great success.
You had great success?
Yeah, I did.
Then maybe that's the process that works for you, right?
Yeah, because I didn't, just hearing you talk about the curing, I just kind of cured them in the sun, I guess, like let them.
You're lucky that they didn't. You're lucky that they didn't dehydrate.
Yeah, they did. No, they didn't. I didn't have any that.
But now, if you dry them in the sun, these are tender roots that just came out of being down where it was damp and cool. Now all of a sudden it's hot and dry. They will sunburn. It's just like potatoes. They will sunburn. It's not good for them. If you're going to dry them in the shade,
Okay.
and in a bit of a breeze is far better, and not necessarily on the cement floor, because the cement will actually draw.
No, they weren't on the cement floor. I had them in my backyard on all my outdoor furniture.
Yep. No, that'll work. That'll work.
Yeah.
As long as it's not, just don't put it in the sunshine.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have full sun the whole day. And
Okay,
I mean, it wasn't, it was, late September, early October. It wasn't, I mean, it was warmish, but not super warm. And can I just ask where you get those styrofoam containers that you have? Are they available?
Any grocery store would have them almost any time now. And by the time that you finally get all ready to use them, that's the time when they've already run out. So look around to the grocery stores and say, look, this is what I'm looking for. It's grapes that comes in them. Now, sometimes they come in cardboard containers as well.
Yeah, I've only ever seen them in the cardboard.
As long as you got a lid, but go around to several stores. It was Freshco where most of my boxes came from.
Okay.
Another option.
Thank you.
I recently found that during the medical transportation of any medicine, they keep it cool, and that's where they use these styrofoam boxes. And I recently bought it from Kijiji.
Yeah, those are a little bit different from what
Yeah.
we use, because they don't have any holes in them. Those are styrofoam containers that would hold dry ice and things like that.
Correct.
There's
Yeah.
no holes in them, like the ones that Murray and everybody we all use. They have holes in them. They're a little bit different.
Now,
Do they
you can
need-
go out, you can actually buy those, but they're like 17 or 18 bucks to buy each individual one. And as far as if you're any close to the medical trade, sometimes they have, like when you get the vermiculite from Uline, it's usually used for transporting medicines and things that if it breaks, it will be soaked up inside that inside the medium there. So if you have stuff of that like that to ship back and forth, and if it's not contaminated, you can get your vermiculite for a whole lot less than what Uline charges.
But Uline is the cheapest place to go get it. if
Well,
you wanted
actually,
it in
you can
bulk.
go to some grow ups and find the stuff as well. So if you know if somebody's growing their grass, the last purchases there were $50 a bag. I have gotten it for about 40, but you won't get it for much less than that for a 4 cubic foot bag.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
recently bought from Holland Industry,
Yep.
$55.
There's a
Or
spot
20.
down. There's a spot down by Hamilton. The Hamilton folks have a nursery somewhere down there where they can get a lot of this stuff for a whole lot less. So if you're in the Hamilton area, there's some nurseries down there that sell this stuff because it's now getting down close to grape growing territory. There's a lot of agricultural effort down there. So
Sorry,
So-
are you talking about the vermiculite or the containers? Sorry, I'm lost a little bit there.
vermiculite.
Oh, okay. Well, here in Ottawa, I paid $32 for the cubic foot bag here last fall.
4
Maybe it's
cubic
gone up now.
4
4
cubic foot.
cubic foot?
Yeah, at Richie's.
That's a lovely price. Treasure it as long as it lasts.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You can
Coming-
reuse and reuse. You don't have.
I
to
do,
purchase
I
the
do.
brick
I
by-
reuse
yeah,
it. I
just
have 2
to
bags
let
of it now
everybody
because I have
know
so many
that.
dahlias.
Don't
Yeah.
throw out your vermiculite, just keep reusing it.
Marie, I have a question. It's Sherry.
Yes, go ahead.
After you hose them down, I was planning on laying them on sheets, drop sheets, fabric sheets in my living room. How long do you dry them before you cure them? And I did it in wood shavings last year, and it worked perfectly well.
Okay. For a drop sheet, really, I would put down nice big corrugated cardboard boxes cut down. That would be, to me, the ideal. Typically, I don't store them. I don't cure them open like that. I put them in the shrub pots and I cover them with the shavings. And then I stack the pots like one on top of the other. So there's very, very little air that gets to them so that they're never open, and they store just like, they're in the spring, they're just about as turgid as when I put them away in the fall. Now, if
So
you
there
store
is-
them,
Sorry.
open, they will go a little softer. A little softness isn't the end of the world though.
No, I wasn't planning on storing them open, but just to dry them because you've hosed them down and they are wet. And so can I just put them directly into wood shavings in those pots, individual pots?
Yeah.
Or do I
yeah.
dry out the moisture before I put them away?
Don't need to dry them out. When you're putting them in the
Ah.
pot, when you're putting them in the shrub pot, you put about an inch of shavings in the bottom of the pot so that even if there's moisture that drops off them, they go in dripping wet. But if it goes down to the bottom, the bottom is open because it's got the holes in it and it's already being held up by the wood shavings that are in there. Now, that's shavings, it's not paper. If you try doing that with paper, it'd just go down and make a paper mache and it'd be a mess. But
Yeah.
the wood shavings will hold it up so that the drying process is a very, very slow process. Just put them in, just directly dripping wet out of being washed.
Oh, I love that. It saves
Good.
me a whole step of, my living room being covered with drop sheet
Yeah, you don't need,
and tubers.
you don't need to pre-dry them. You just put them right into the wood shavings. As long as you got that inch layer in the bottom, then just give them a slight shake just to kind of get all of the shavings around them. And then you put a little, about an inch perhaps over the top. Make sure that when you're done, you can't really see the tubers inside because it's covered with that top layer of shavings. Then
Right.
you just take each pot that's done that way and progressively smaller, you just stack them up and they take very little space for the average grower. Now for me, they take, I have to have about an 8 foot by 8 foot storage area. and it'll be probably 4.5 feet deep by the time I'm done with all the pots.
The storage area is not the problem. The pots is the problem.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know where to get all these pots. So last year I did them in boxes and pots, and
Yeah.
it worked. It was good. And I
you
just want to take a minute to address somebody else that was talking about storing stuff in their basement. I did it a couple of years ago. I put them in the attic of my garage, which is really, it butts right up against one of the bedrooms, so it should have been warm. I lost everything. I think there was no temperature regulation. It was like up and down, up and down. Everything came frozen, and I had to toss it. So that did not work at all.
Well,
Last question.
but for a roof, if it's well insulated, the flat part of your ceiling will be well insulated, and the roof will be outside temperature up in that roof. If it's poorly insulated, that's when you can get away with storing your dahlias up in the attic, because now that means you've got the warmth from the house keeping it from getting to the freezing point up in the attic. We had one member that used to do that over in Oshawa. He no longer grows. He's sold out and moved to an apartment, but he didn't have good insulation, so he just put everything in the attic and it stored just fine. So you have to go through that whole process. If you're well insulated, don't even try, because it's going to be the outside temperature.
Right. One other question.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the tip about I had just 2 dahlias in pots, and I had them on my patio, hot stone, and both of them are just starting to flower now, but really weak stems and they don't look good at all. But I just learned that I should have placed them on the ground as opposed to on the patio stone, from what you just said. And they were like in very large pots, so they should not have suffered, but they did. That's already done. Any soil prep to be done now for the spring?
Well, yeah, once your tubers are out of the ground, then you can put on, shredded leaves or whatever organic matter. At times I've taken a leaf shredder and put all of my top growth into that, and it looks like just like ensilage, like we'd have on a farm. I'm not sure if you know what that term is, but like when they grind the corn all up and it makes sort of like a green slurry that way they feed the cattle. That's what you get in a smaller format when you run it through like that. But then you can put that back into the ground. But if you keep on taking and taking and taking, obviously you're going to deplete whatever it is that dahlias like, and you'll be progressively getting less and less good product from your growth.
Right.
But if you put like horse manure on or something like that, do it in the fall so it has a chance to break down over the winter.
Okay, so there is that to be done then, to give it something that'll make it better in the spring. Okay.
Yep. Laurie, are we?
Chris Chang has found the annotate tool.
Yeah.
So I'm just having a little fun with her.
That is a great shear. It was Naomi that found those last year and brought them out about this time of the year. And they're a little actually heavier duty than what the Lee Valley shears are. But with that, you have more leverage to do the cuts. But sometimes with that wedge-shaped end on it, it can sometimes slide the skin, and you can lose your shoot that way. But that's why I wound up going back to the X-Acto knife. But there's a danger that goes along with it for people who aren't used to it. But these normally will do the job very, very well. Just don't get down to, you don't have to separate absolutely every tuber from every other tuber, but you can cut your tubers. If you're in doubt, you cut them into quarters even and store them that way and get rid of most of the stem, and you'll be fine. And these will do a great job of that.
So Marie is actually answering questions that are in the chat. If you're curious, you don't know where the chat is, you just click on chat on the bottom and it'll open up and you can see all of the comments and questions and, things that people have put in there. Okay?
Like you notice that Kat has already made a note in there of another source of utility scissors.
Exactly, yeah.
I couldn't find yours, Murray, so I went on a hunt and I came up with the they were fantastic. So
Well, they're all pretty much the same, but go with the most heavy duty, like you see on the screen there. There are some of those that have the shoulder area twice that long, and while you have more leverage, you have to operate by having your hand open wider, and not everybody is comfortable with that, like especially if you have a little bit of arthritis or things like that. We have to talk to everybody. We have to talk to everybody to wind up covering. You have to find something that works for you. It's just like storage. You have to have the tools that work for you, and just because they work for me, they don't necessarily work for everybody.
yeah, speaking of storage, I'm the wrap and saran wrap girl, but
You're-
nobody talks about it.
That's a lot of work.
I find it so
So
easy.
did you hear that, Murray? Kat is the wrap and saran wrap each tuber kind of girl.
Well, I know I actually wrap them in packages of 10, so I know each
Mm.
package has 10 tubers.
Okay.
You just roll them like sausages, then put the next one in and roll, the next one roll. I find it's very quick and easy, and I probably have 99% success rate with it. But anyway, nobody ever talks about that method.
No, I've done that, and yes, they store fine. But what I found, Kat, was that like we were going to shows in February, for example,
Oh,
and now I'm trying to pull my stuff out, and I'm going to unroll and unroll and unroll and unroll until I get down to one that actually has a chute on it, because I don't ever let anything out of my hand without a chute.
right.
So I can go through and unwrap and then rewrap and unwrap and rewrap and then back into keeping track of my labels and everything else. It's
Sure.
okay. It's okay if you're taking it out once for your crop, but if you're going to all these shows over a period of 2 months, like
Right.
like I do,
Mhm.
it kind of doesn't work. I just leave them loose in the bag, and I can dump the whole bag out, take out whatever I want, put them all right back in, and put the tag back on, and I'm done.
Yes, that's right. Whereas I take mine out for my sale and they all come out at the same time. So it works for me for that reason. Yeah.
Yeah, see, all the circumstances dictate whether a method works or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any recommendations for where to get labels? I didn't want to have ties that I have to tie and untie on the post. So I was looking for kind of loop labels that you could just pass through a loop and then just move them around. Any recommendations?
I don't have any. Anytime you get into labels that are quick on, usually there's a substantial expense that goes along with it. What I found workable for 1 year, I could get 1,000 labels off of a site on Amazon. It was about $40, so it's about 4 cents a label. Now, that's fine until you go through one season, in which case at the end of one season, unless it's one that's poked into the ground, up in the sunshine and wind and weather, it becomes brittle, and often it will break in half and you have no idea what the rest of the thing said. So what I wound up eventually doing was I was going to Venetian blinds. And I didn't want the plastic ones unless they were brand new in the store, but I cut them and I could put all kinds of writing on them and they'd last for one season as well. But you have to now punch a hole in them and put a wire of some sort on them, which those you can get them at Canadian Tire, those ones with a paper wrap or the green in a roll where you just take off so much and cut it off.
Yeah.
You could get that. And use that for the wire to attach it on there. But you've got the work of putting the wire and the hole and all that kind of stuff, and then writing the label and whatever else. But it does a good job. But I prefer the metal Venetian blinds. There's a number of people go through and put those faux wood ones in now. Take out the blinds. It's wonderful if you get a hold of the metal tags. I've used that for a number of years, and this year I wound up going to using a P-Touch label maker, which is expensive as sin. It costs about an average of about 40 cents a label, but it's a permanent kind of label. Like you can use it. I've some out there that I've had out there for 3 and 4 years, and it looks just as good now as what it was when I made it. But I used to spend hours because I have one tag for the pot, and then I'd have that and it would go into the ground. And then I have a tag for each plant for up on the stake, and then I'd wind up making sure that I had the tags right, and I put another one on the bag. I was going through about 5,000 or 6,000 tags a year.
Oh,
So
good God.
so it takes, I mean, just think of writing 6,000 tags.
Yeah.
The fact that you can spend 40 cents and do it once, if I get, 8 or 10 years out of it, I've saved a load of time.
Right, right. So where did you get those tags? What did you call it? You what?
No, the Venetian blinds in metal.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah.
like, see, now I could put an expensive tag on that, but if I put an expensive tag on something that would get brittle and gone in a season or two, I'm wasting my time and money.
I don't mind the writing part. And I think Chris and I talked about this, and Chris was of the same opinion. And she said it might have actually been your original idea to use the metal blinds and just write on them. The
Yeah.
part I wanted to avoid was the twisting and the tying, and
Okay.
moving it. But I like what you just said. If I had 3 of the same, then one
Lori,
for
is
the
this,
post.
was it, Lori, did you find this tag?
Yeah, so this is what I'm using. These are Tyvek tags. And then I still use the magic marker. I don't go the expensive Murray route and use the nice label maker, but that could be done. They're pre-wired. You get 1,000 for like $92. They have different sizes, different colors. They don't rip. They have the wire. You can purchase them with the wire pre-attached. So that's another option. I concur with Murray. If you get those ones that just loop, you can't use them a second season. They're brittle. They'll just break apart. And sometimes after the season is over and you're digging up your clumps, those ones that loop will actually break and come off your stem, and then you're sunk.
Now, Michael used those ones that looped. What's your comments there, Michael?
I've used them and they seem to be staying fairly well. They're not actually drying out too much, but I haven't started taking them off yet. So I guess in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to tell you. If they start falling apart, you'll hear me screaming all the way from Whitby.
Yeah.
No, just to so that you know as well, Michael uses horizontal grid wiring, like a mesh wiring. So he can put that on and identify each individual spot where there's a plant. I use stakes except for the seedlings. So I put my tags on the stake, but I wouldn't be able to put that loop type on a stake. It wouldn't stay there. But he can put it on because he's got the mesh net. It's like a Hortonova or Agro Invention type of horizontal mesh. But if you take that off first, you've just made a mesh of things. See, that was the first time tonight,
Hey,
That was a
Mr.
good one.
Dahlia, Mr. Dahlia, you're taking all the meeting time.
Yep.
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, is there anybody that's here that's growing mums that needs to put their mums away for the winter? Kat? Okay, that's it. Just the one? Okay, Kat, I'm going to talk to you in person about it.
Okay.
And we can continue with the conversation on dahlias if anyone else has any other questions for Murray.
I have.
As I see, we're already at 8:31, so I don't want to take too much more time for the mums. And
Can I
what I'll
just
do
ask?
is-
I
Yeah, go
use
ahead.
I use the metal Venetian blinds and they work really well. And I think somebody has mentioned before, I just use regular Sharpie and I have to go around and redo it several
Yep.
times in the summer. There is a better marker product, I think, out there. I just wondered if could I get the name?
It's a
Pentel
Pentel.
N50
Yeah,
is one of the most permanent. And you
And
can
where can you
Pentel,
get that?
just
Pentel
look on
N50?
Amazon. Just go on
Okay.
Amazon. The other
Pentel
one,
F50.
the other
can you
one,
type
if you
that into the chat, Murray, maybe? And then everyone can see.
okay,
name
the
of
other
it?
one is a Staedtler marker that you can typically get at artist supply stores. And go for black. Don't go for the lighter colors.
Right. Okay. If you could
Now-
type those in the comments, it'd be great.
Yeah, once I figure out how, just to comment as well, a wide strip of black works pretty well. Like when you're writing on there, if you go on there with a narrow marker, it won't stay on there. And it also depends on the porosity of the surface. Like the metal tags, it doesn't sink in as much. So
No, it doesn't at
actually-
all.
no, but to see now, or if you have the blinds that are used and say it was in a kitchen where there was a bit of grease, God, hey, you have to wash these things off before you start writing. But on the plastic tags, they're more porous and it's more successful at getting a tag to last, but the tag won't last, but the writing will. So you're really still down to one season.
So there's a question about, does the styrofoam need to be ventilated? And I can answer that right now. No, it does not need to be ventilated. I have stored an unventilated styrofoam, but you got to have it cured right. If there's any moisture and that moisture builds up, you're sunk. Murray, you want to add to that?
Yeah, if the bags are sealed and knotted, really the humidity part isn't really a big player. It doesn't matter whether you've got ventilation or not. Now, as far as keeping the temperature level, maybe closed might do it better. I know Carolyn, for example, she had all of hers were in like the styrofoam coolers or regular commercial coolers is the way she stored the stuff. And there's no ventilation in that at all either, but storage preparation is key so that works.
Thank you.
Bless you, Rod.
On me?
Bless you.
What did I do?
Oh, I thought you just sneezed.
Boy, you got good ears.
We all heard.
We
all
all have,
heard.
Rod. We all heard. Any other questions, guys?
I have a question.
Yeah,
What-
Brian.
What do you use to check the humidity in the room?
Hygrometer.
Lick your
So
finger.
I've got a little thing that you plug that is run by battery, and it has checks relative humidity and it checks temperature, and it can have various probes that you can put in various locations, so that I can have one where I store my tubers, one where I store my moms, one outside under the jack, just because I'm curious what the temperature is. But the main component is the only one that tests for the relative humidity.
The answer can be simple, from a dollar store unit for about $5 or $6 through to Canadian Tire for the combined. There's a little gadget. Sometimes they charge about $25 for it, and
Yeah.
there's nothing intelligent about it. It's just the old-fashioned. It gives you the air temperature and the humidity wherever it's sitting. And I have one of those in the basement. I have one of those out in the greenhouse. And for temperature, I have two of them that have remote sensors on them, so I can tell at various levels in the greenhouse, 2 different levels. And I can do the check from indoors for the temperature, because I don't want it to get too hot for some of my plants that are up on the shelf. So you can go however deep your pockets are for your hobby.
I constantly look at that temperature. You know, in the winters, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll look at that main control module to see what each of the little sensors are reading, to make sure nothing has frozen, because I store in a section of my garage that has been walled off, and then I have a little space heater that goes on to ensure it stays above freezing, because I like to keep things really cold. The mums need to be kept quite cold, so I check every morning. Okay, is it okay?
I
It doesn't
do need to
hurt.
check them.
It doesn't.
I store mine in the garage just like Laurie. I sectioned off part of it and put styrofoam all on the inside of the walls and the ceiling, so it's just a little box. And I have a heater in there. If it drops below 5 degrees, it comes on, and that's it. That's how I do mine. I don't really care about humidity, because there's humidity is in the bag.
You're right.
The humidity around that room makes no difference. The humidity's inside the bag. As long as the tubers don't freeze, it's all you need to worry about.
There's a
Humidity is
backup.
inside the tuber in the bag, actually, because you've cured
Right,
and you
right, yes.
that's the required amount of humidity inside the tuber because it's been cured.
Right.
I'm jealous. I live in Ottawa. We don't have those warm temperatures you guys have.
Oh, no, no.
Oh, it gets cold
The
here.
heater has to come on.
Yeah.
I'm in 5B. I know you're colder because my mom lives in Bears Bay. So
Yeah.
I know you're colder,
It's
but
colder here.
5B, we get minus 35s.
Yes,
We're-
it's
we're-
Mary
Lori-
Ann. I use the bottle of wine, Lori. It tells me, and I don't have to check, and it's a white one. And so you can see if it's going to crystallize because beer gets messy and smelly and it's volatile, and red wine's hard and we're going blind and old. And it's a bottle of wine, and I can see it from a distance.
So you leave a bottle of white wine with your tubers.
No, near the other part of the garage, so I know that the section
Ah.
I've quadrant off like you and Michael do, then it's completely done and it's been successful and I'm a happy woman at the end of the year.
And you have a nice cold bottle of wine.
There is
Exactly.
an inexpensive way of handling areas where you want to have heat added in small areas. There's something called a thermocube that it's got one plug on one side of it and it's got two outlets on the other side. And what you can do is if you got a very small area, you can plug a light bulb into one of them and a corded clock into the other. So then you can tell whether or not this cube turned the power on to the light bulb to warm it up a little bit. That's an incandescent light bulb, by the way. It's not one of these. It's not one of these new ones. So you get a bit of warmth off it. If it's a larger area, you can have it plugged into a small electric heater. And again, with the clock into the other side, and you can then tell whether or not that heater came on. But that's a backup. You know, I've had some close calls with I have a natural gas furnace in my greenhouse. But there was one time I was looking at my remote reader and it was 1 degree out there. And what had happened was the pilot light had blown out in the wind. And I tell you, that was a near miss. I just about lost the entire contents of my greenhouse.
Mhm.
So Marie, you've offered, you're still offering a field trip, if I may. Whereabouts are you located and how can I get your address?
It's 501 Harris Court in Whitby.
Oh, Murray, you're in trouble.
There you go.
They're all
You know,
gonna
this
be
is
saying to put you-
recorded and placed onto YouTube, right?
That's fine. That's fine. Anybody that comes out and wants information has to work for a little while.
I have to dig a couple of
So-
100 tubers up.
If all those people on YouTube find out that the address is as it is, I'll be able to get my crop out of the ground a whole lot faster if there's any talent that comes out.
So
I gotta
have
say,
to-
I'm heading to Ottawa next week, so that's very tempting to drive down to Whitby, I'll tell you. Anyway,
Well, it's not
It's
far
not
away.
that far, Anne.
It's
Come
no,
on.
it's not that far.
It's not far. It's not far away from your old stomping grounds up on the lake either.
No, it's not.
Well, I've
That's
got
true.
125 dahlias in Ottawa. You can help me come and dig them out.
We
Oh, I'd
also
like- I
have,
could do that. Yeah.
We also have an executive member, Brittany LePage. She grows out in Ottawa as well.
And
So if you'd like me to put you in contact with her.
I would love it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
and Anne as
daughter-
well, let me know.
Expertise.
Yeah, my daughter's growing about 10 this year, so up from 3 or 4 last year. So
Wow,
that's in Ottawa. Yeah,
turning her into a dahlia grower.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm
So-
growing on a cooperative farm and it was like totally clay soil and I thought it
Ooh.
would be a disaster, but they're flourishing.
I love it. That's what I
Flourishing.
have.
Just be a little bit of a challenge to get the mud off the roots when you dig them up.
Yes, I
Yes.
know it's going to be. That's what I thought. It's going to
But
be a
if you
challenge.
have any, if you have
Yep.
any source of a coarse sand or sharp sand, builder sand, you can spread that over top and like say 1/3 to 2/3 of clay, and you'll wind up having a clay loam, and you will forever bless your efforts to start with.
Mhm.
Can I just use the sand that's at my cottage? Well, my cottage is actually in Ottawa, like just the sand on the beach, or does it have to be builder's sand?
I would, now, is it a granite type of sand? Like it's,
It's pretty coarse. It's not
Okay,
fine,
okay.
fine.
just give it a try for 1 year, but yeah, like, sure. It takes sand to make clay loam,
Exactly. Thank you.
but clay, you have to almost erode the stuff off. God, it's like a potter's wheel. That it's,
Oh,
I've got stuff in the garden that's
Horrible.
like that.
Yeah, no, I'm a part of a community CSA where I'm helping out, like growing and harvesting vegetables.
Yep.
And when we take the potatoes out the other day, like they're clay balls.
Yep.
They don't even look like potatoes.
Go together and get a truckload of sand brought in from somewhere. Get it spread around and get it worked in with a tiller, and you'll find that your job is a whole lot easier. And now that doesn't
know
mean that
what?
you still continue to add all of your organic matter on top of that. Okay?
Right, right.
Yep.
So are
And,
oak leaves okay to
cover-
add on top? Would oak leaves be okay?
No,
No.
mostly not a good idea.
Yeah, it's too much acid or something in the.
Well, oak leaves aren't ideal, but it's black walnut you really have to worry about.
So what's the best kind of leaf?
Oh, just shredded maple leaves.
Leaves. Okay.
Sure. Works
I
fine.
steal all my neighbors' leaves when
Yeah.
they leave the garbage truck. I go around stealing all the bags of leaves.
I use everything. I
Uh,
use oak leaves, maple leaves, banana
just-
leaves.
It's
Yeah,
just
you
our
can-
cottage
yeah.
is covered in red oaks. Like we
Yeah,
have
you can
tons of
also-
leaves there.
You can also use pine needles. I've done that before, and it's not the problem that some people claim it is. It works fine, but you shred them up.
Really? Oh,
Yep.
so shred them because we have tons of white pine too.
Yep. I do at my cottage too, but it's too far away to bring them out by boat.
What about cut up cedars? Because I have a lot of cedars and we trim them all the time. Can that go in the soil, or is that just safe
I
to
w-
put that on top of your, the sheets?
I wouldn't use it at all because it doesn't break down very well.
Okay. And are everybody's gardens just as large and impressive as Murray's and Michael's? Like,
I-
should I
Mine's not
even be in this club?
It's
No.
not large. I've only 25 feet by 25 feet. It's not big.
There's
just
just too
looks
much,
big, but
too
it's
much
not.
magic in 25 by 25.
But then I have no backyard. It's just dahlias. That's it. I have no grass.
He's well rooted where he is.
Yes.
So I have an
Mother
ironwood
too.
here in Ottawa. I cannot grow them in the city because I live on the edge of the Ottawa River and forested area. And with all the critters, they just devour them. But I can grow them like just on the edge of Ottawa at a farm that I'm growing them on. And I have no earwigs, no animals. I mean, there's deer fencing around it, but
Right. It just means trekking there back and forth, right?
it's between the farm is between my house and my cottage, so it's right on the way.
Okay.
The folks that came through today made note. He said, I have not seen an earwig or a slug or a snail in your garden. He said, what do you do? And I said, well, I don't spray. Basically, I don't do much. But none of the three well, first of all, you want to not give them a home. And none of them apparently like cedar mulch. And I've got cedar mulch around on top of the landscape fabric, and I've got straw down the aisleways. I would have thought that the straw would have given them all sorts of a home. Now, as far as the slugs and snails is concerned, I used to have a hay field beside me. So what I did, I simply wound up cutting it. Now it's like grass. Well, that's not a very good home for a slug or a snail because it gets very dry in the sun. So basically, you just kind of deprive them of a place to live or what they like to eat. And that's a problem solved. I mean, some people like to go around and put chickens in their patch. Well, I don't have any chickens and I don't want to put a fence around, so everybody's got to
once you-
figure it out.
So once you lay the fabric and you're growing hundreds of plants, how do you have to then rip a hole at, every 2 feet to then put in your tubers?
How's it done, Lori?
We cut a little X with an X-Acto knife, and then we
Oh my
take
good Lord.
a drill with a contraption on the end that drills a hole, and then we plunk the tuber in, and then we knock the soil back in, and then it's planted.
Yeah, we had a,
I have the contraption. I bought that from Lee Valley. As soon as I started speaking to Chris and I got into this, I was like, that was the best thing I did. But to lay fabric and then to make an X, like go down on your fours and make an X for that many plants,
oh, it's
Oh,
fast.
dedication.
It's fast. It's fast. You just go.
Yeah.
Super fast.
Having
yeah.
having to weed instead is going to take you days and days and days. It is so well worth putting that landscape fabric on. I would never be able to grow at my plot without the landscape fabric. I would
So, but-
constantly be pulling weeds.
But I've seen on a few sites it says not to use that, so that's not true at all then.
Well,
Not to use it because of why.
I'm trying to think now. I was on the
It's
American
probably
Valley
because
Society.
it's plastic based and it's maybe an environmental thing.
but not all of them are a plastic base.
Yeah, not, but I have seen that argument against their
Yep.
use.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people tell me I shouldn't breathe because it affects the climate. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
stop it,
There's,
Marie.
there's certain things.
Causing that.
Anyway,
So my question regarding shredded leaves. Do
Yep.
you do you do you rent out the shredder from Home Depot or something, or you have it
Buy
at your
it.
own?
We
Right.
most of us have bought it.
there's actually, there's kind of a simple way you can do it. I mean, you could just run the lawnmower over top of it 4 or 5 times. And if you have the bagging type of lawnmower, you could just collect them on the way through. You know,
You can also get a big garbage bin and with your whippers, put the leaves in there and with your whipper snipper.
oh, but that's
go around
punitive.
'em. Bring, 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 bring.
That's really punitive. Do the lawnmower thing.
And
I got a leaf shredder once from Amazon. It was $150.
That was that Sunjoe.
Yeah, Sanjo, and it lasted 3 years, and it was great. It whizzed through. It made fine powder out of leaves. It was great.
But it only lasted 3 years.
Yeah, it only lasted 3 years. The motor thing burnt out on it, but I mean, 3 years for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bags of leaves, pretty good.
Yeah.
and
The best way of doing it is to go around when people put their leaves out of the curb and give your knee a poke into the bag and see whether or not it's the type where they've used that, those ones that suck them up and cut them up. And basically you can get about 8 bags into one. You don't have to do any more. You just have to take them home and spread them out and work them in. You just get lazy. It's creative, you know?
So when you nudge them with your knee, how can you tell?
Because it's very, very heavy. A regular bag of leaves, it just knocks right aside. But if it's really, really heavy, assuming they haven't put a whole bunch of logs in it, because some people do that too. And some people after Halloween, they put their pumpkins inside these things and you go up and give it a bump. You break your kneecap, you know?
Or their hanging baskets. They dump their hanging baskets right into the bags.
Oh, you get bricks, you get dog remains, and everything else in some of them. But you have to know, okay? There are certain places that people are more friendly. You just gotta, it's experience rated, okay?
Go into the neighborhoods with trees. Those neighborhoods that have the large mature trees. It's gonna be a lot of
Just,
leaf bags there.
just figure out a reason to explain all the people walking by who are you're going by and putting your knee into all of the bags that are at the curb.
And after a couple of years, people will start bringing them to your house. You don't
Yes,
even
they
have to
will.
go get them.
I get that. I get that.
I get that too.
Yeah.
You know, they already think I'm crazy when I go out at 11 p.m. with my headlight, stuck in my forehead,
Yeah.
looking for earwigs. So, you know, I'm like way past the crazy point.
Well, some of us grow dahlias. That qualifies for crazy to start off with.
Are earwigs cyclical? Because like the last 5 years here in Ottawa, they've just been horrible. And like, I'm telling you, like next to none this year.
Wow.
I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked.
Probably sent them all here.
Maybe. Like I've used neem oil. I use the, the tubes, the pieces of hose, and I used to catch tons this year, like almost nothing.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I
they
hope it
just enjoy
lasts.
it.
I have a question on, is anyone doing composting? I mean, having our own compost bin.
Mhm.
Anyone doing it in Ottawa or Toronto region? And how to do
I've done that. And I got to the point of saying, well, for the volume of stuff that I need, it really wasn't a suitable answer, and it was taking a lot of time in the process, because obviously you have to put down the brown and the green and the brown and the green, and then you have to turn it all over and all this kind of stuff. Now, it felt good in the process, because instead of putting my green container at the street, except for the meat part, I'd wind up using everything that I had. And it felt good from a climate standpoint, but you know what I needed to go to the horse farm and come back with a 20 cubic yard shipment and put it put it on the ground, and it was done. So but
Yeah,
it left
What
me,
I
horse,
find
what
they-
horse farm between here and Whitby, or wherever you go, which horse farm do you go to?
usually I go to a place called Dreamcrest up by Port Perry, up in Ann's old territory.
And
Up
does
near-
it have to be well seasoned like horse manure? Because I read online, they said avoid horse manure.
Well, I keep hearing all kinds of things online, and now see, this is an equestrian farm, and they used to pay more for having everything organically grown, and they couldn't have anything toxic on it, because if the straw that they put in the pen had been sprayed with insecticide or fungicide or whatever it was, the horses would always manage to eat some of it. So they wound up changing from using straw to using like a wood shavings type of bedding material for the horses. Now, as far as testing is concerned, if there was any foreign material that they had in the hay, the straw, anything, and it came up on a test on equestrians, because they test both the horse and the rider when they're doing equestrian events. So if it wasn't, like they couldn't even take any antihistamines, for example, because that affected the tests. So this is free of all of that kind of stuff. And what he had done as well is he had a great big pile there. He kept, I don't know, 60 or 70 horses. And he had a pile that he put a half bushel of red wiggler worms into. And that helped to decompose. And it was over the period of 1 year that everything in that pile went kind of black. And when I went up there the last time, would be about 6 years ago, I was bringing home these dumping trailer loads, and it was all full of red wigglers. So this stuff would go into the soil, and they'd still be able to continue to eat. And that introduced another great level of content to my soil. So yes, you can't use manure that, for example, if it's Roundup contaminated, or what do they call them, aminopyralid or something, that kind of stuff. You can have it so that it curls the leaves on your plants, and you kiss the year goodbye. So you don't want that. You have to ask the questions to make sure that it's as organic as possible and has been sitting for a while is the ideal. Now, at this particular farm, I could put on fresh horse manure and it would not be a problem, because I know the history of how they feed and bed their horses. That was a long answer to a simple question, but
No,
there
no,
you
no, no.
go.
I love
we're-
the detail. That's great. So
We're getting up to
basically,
9
leaves-
o'clock, actually. Sorry, Sherry. We're getting up to 9 o'clock. So this is going to be the last question. Now, Sherry got a lot of time to ask questions. Is there anyone else that wants to? No, that's okay. Is there anyone else that wants to ask a question? This is going to be the last one.
Well, shut my mouth.
Oh, Jay, you got quite a few opportunities as well. Is there anyone else?
I just want to thank you all for all your great advice and encouragement. It's really beneficial. Thank you, Murray and Lori, everyone.
You're
Welcome.
very welcome. Okay, one for Jay, one for Sherry, and then we're heading out and going to bed. Okay.
Mine is actually not a question. I heard from all of you expert. I also want to hear from Rod, who is winner for best one. We need some input from you as well.
About what, Jay?
In general, about the mistakes that you made and you would advise any novice gardener to avoid it.
Oh, the mistakes I made.
How did you get
Life
basic?
mistakes or
Well,
failure mistakes?
I made a ton of mistakes, so I don't even know where to start. But
A couple would help.
the only thing I would say to any person who wants to grow for competition
Mhm.
is to grow more than one variety of the same variety. In other words, if you grew, say, Embrace, you should grow 4 of them, because timing is the most difficult thing for a dahlia grower. And for anyone to have a good dahlia on a good day, I think that's about 90% luck. But if you have a lot of varieties,
At the same time.
a lot
plant.
more of the same variety, then you have a better chance. So if you grew 6 Brinterfell or 6, what do you call it? What's the one that Laurie grew?
Louis White.
Louis White.
Yeah, Louis White. You get a better chance to get it right on the dot, because then you can go 2 up, and then you have 12 chances to get it for maybe 2 shows or 3 shows. But other than that, I don't know what advice I can give, because a lot of it's trial and error for most of us. The fewer dahlias you grow, the better it's to look after them. The more dahlias you grow, the tougher it is to grow and to look after them. That's all I
But
can
there's
say.
so many gorgeous ones out there. We're like kids in a candy shop.
Well,
Right.
you've got to get your own favorites and then maybe experiment with 1 or 2 new ones. But the other part of growing dahlias is you start to know the individual flower and its characteristics, how long it takes, how to,
I have to check
how
on my
to-
chicken. Okay.
somebody's talking about chickens, and how to grow them. But the more you grow, it's tougher to look after them.
So true.
Try and
That's all I can say.
document as much as you
Yes.
can.
And
Watch
these
it.
guys are
It's
talking
not-
about show,
Yeah.
they're talking about timing for show. So, if you've got
Well,
a
I
whole
think-
bunch of different varieties that you want to grow because you want to see the nice flowers, then you know what, you can you can grow a whole bunch because you don't have to care for them as much as you do when you're growing for show. That's what takes all the effort for sure.
That's so true too. Absolutely. So I'm not growing for show.
But you will. Next year, you're going to bring some to the show, Lori.
Yes, you will.
Okay, Sherry, your last question?
I had none. I was just confirming. So it's dried leaves and horse shit, if I may. What I need to
I'm
focus
going to
on.
throw another one in there for you to start researching and thinking about is a green cover crop. So a lot of my beds are going to have winter rye. They're seeded right now already, these beds. And winter rye produces a nice cover, lots of roots, so it stops the weeds from growing. And then I terminate by pushing the lawnmower over it, cutting it down, and then putting my landscape fabric over top. That's usually around the beginning of May. And then by the end of May, I can plant into it. And that gives you organic matter. There's something growing in that soil for all the organisms to be associated with the roots. Everybody's happy. So green cover crop. And I really find that helps my clay soil.
But do you find, Lori, that the pictures turn out kind of grainy?
I always say, when Marie makes those comments, where's the barf button? Usually it's on Facebook, so I'm trying, where's the barf button?
So, Lori,
The
Uh,
farm
yeah.
I grow at does a lot of winter crop cover. They do wheat and rye on the rows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a
Lori,
really
out of
good-
curiosity, did you grow Louis White? You grew 2 fairly good ones, one for our show and one at Hamilton. Did you grow that 1 up?
Those were 2 up.
Those were 2 up. Both of them were 2 up.
No, I lie.
It sounds like a
They
lie,
might have been 3 up.
but did
The
you
third
call them?
bloom was late.
Okay, so they were on a different stem levels?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
It's actually called Lewis White, Louis. We just
Not
discovered.
Louis White. Okay.
No, I
No.
think you can pronounce Louis as Louis.
Oh, you can, right?
Yeah, yeah. We can ask. Let's ask our
Oh.
UK people. Let's ask Dave Spencer in November. How do you pronounce it?
I would say coming from that part of the world, they'd say Lewis.
Lewis?
Well, I had a brother and he was Lewis. And if you know about Louis Armstrong, he hated being called Louis.
Mm.
Yeah.
He wanted Lewis.
so
Hey,
Lori-
Lori, I have a question about your Louis or Louis White. Did you disbud it heavily to grow that one flower so big?
3 up, Chris.
Yeah, but say when you have the little side bud, do you disbud
Oh
those?
yeah, all the way down the stem. It has 3 stems with nothing else on those stems.
And that's all you get is 3 flowers for the whole year.
Yep.
Wow.
So time it
Lo-
right or you are buggered.
And Lori, how many did you have?
I had 4 plants.
Yeah, that's a good number. You probably should grow 8, but that's a
Thanks,
Not
good number.
Rod.
familiar. Is it a dinner plate variety? What? I don't know.
Oh, that's a
Ooh.
Oh,
swear
sorry.
word.
I know,
Oh,
sorry.
Oh,
A big
here,
one.
here.
somebody mute her quickly.
So Michael has a picture of it here somewhere.
Yeah,
What's
it's at
wrong with
the
dinner
end
plate?
almost.
Just so I know.
Oh,
I've hit a nerve.
If you have a dahlia that looks like a dinner plate, please put it
No.
in the garden. You never
This
want a
is-
dahlia that looks like a dinner plate that's flat.
This is more like a buffet. It's not just one dinner plate.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
it's just a marketing term. That's all.
Yeah.
Because I have an almonds joy that's I'm looking at it now. It's 8 inches across.
It's an A-size dahlia.
Yeah, that's not even a large.
Yeah,
That's a
just
large, that's
That's
a large B.
not a giant. Yeah.
that's just
That's a
barely
B.
that's just barely an A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and but at the end of the season, do you guys cut the flower and keep it in the garden and rest of the plant throw it in the yard waste?
The
Start again.
top I throw in the yard waste and then the tuber and everything is dug out, right?
Oh, of course, to dug out.
Yeah, yeah.
The remaining part means plant itself, because when it's died out, you don't throw it, even the flower, remaining flower in it. Is it any harm if you keep it in the soil? Make it compost right there.
You can
No,
chop it
no.
up.
Oh, I see. Chop like
Chop
a
it up.
chop and drop.
Yeah.
The reason, so I was thinking about this the other day because they were talking a lot about chop and drop, but the problem is if you're very confident in your stock being disease-free, if you're 100% confident of that, chop and drop is a good thing to do. All of the nutrients from that plant are going back into that soil when it rots. If you are not 100% confident, then you are accumulating disease in your soil by doing chop and drop.
There's if you have a virused plant and do a chop and drop, it is not an issue because it's the root material that's going to wind up in being able to carry a plant over if the temperature conditions are right. But if you are where we are, it freezes, so it will not live. Now, there are some conditions though, like sclerotinia, for example, is a disease that if you go back and look at YouTube, Lori took some videos of me pointing out what sclerotinia looks like. It looks like little wee pucks of substance in the middle of a stem that's gone necrotic. And you can pull that stem apart with your fingers and you can see these little lumps that are inside. That's something that affects soybeans and all this kind of stuff. And you can get it airborne for about 5 miles away. And so if you're anywhere close to a farmer's field, you can be downwind from it and get this in your patch. That stuff will last over the winter. So you just take a look and make sure you don't have any dead looking stems. If you have dead looking stems, take the dead stem out and you can chop and drop, or really you should shred the rest because these stalks will not decompose very quickly. They're too large and too woody. But I don't do that. I have spot out back where I throw it over the berm, and after a while, it'll all break down. There's 3 different spots where I put this stuff. I don't put it back in usually, but I have a shredder that I can put these things through, and I can make like a farmer insulage out of it, and it goes back into the soil. But it's a kind of a choice thing, and if I have the time, I'll put it back into the soil.
Yeah, and everybody, please, please be on the lookout for leafy and crown gall.
Oh
Do
yeah.
not
Yeah.
say, I'm gonna be saving that. I'm not, oh, it's probably fine.
Sorry,
You
look
know,
out.
there's lots of pictures all over Facebook and on the internet to what this looks like.
What's it called? Sorry.
Leafy gall and crown gall. Do not save those. And certainly when everybody kindly donates to the Society tuber sale, make sure you have your clean stock and we don't have your galled stock. So keep an eye out for it. If you are concerned about something that you have, just send an image to ccdsgeneral@gmail.com and we can answer for you what we think it might be, or put it on an image on the Facebook page and we can respond right away to that too. Okay.
And Connie Thompson out in BC has started that petition this year to the federal government
Yeah, and in
about
fact,
imports.
yeah, a lot of the names, that are imports, it's almost, unless they've been grown disease-free by a grower for several years, we probably don't even want them in the sale. We probably, as people that grow dahlias, do not want to add those to our garden. Be very careful where you get your stock in this, start purchasing your stock. Keep all of these in your mind when you're, thinking, when you're starting to purchase, when you're saving. Keep all these things in your mind. Don't buy from Walmart. Don't buy from Home Depot. Don't buy all those named varieties that are Dutch imports, unless somebody's been growing them disease-free for several years. Be very careful with your stock, it's precious stock. You don't want to, get disease in there and then, everything is questionable.
There's a problem that that petition that Connie's putting out is going to face, though, because the products are all inspected by Canadian inspectors. But what they do is that they bring a whole shipment load in and they'll just take an arbitrary sample and they'll take a look at the arbitrary sample. But if it's got stuff in it, it would just simply go back to the farmer. But all the farmer has to do is go back, take it, repack it, bring it back again. And if that's not the sample chosen, it comes right across. But the challenge is that you can't go back to the Dutch folks and say that really it's a problem over there because it's our inspectors, but it's the inspection process itself does not inspect everything. But even, for example, when you're taking like a Kelvin floodlight, for example, there's 2 million samples of that sent over here every year. How long do you think it would take to take a really good look at these for disease and such? Like, it's just not going to happen. So really, it almost down to the point of where you just boycott the whole damn process.
I guess it's good in a way, though, to get it on the radar of federal officials. Yeah.
No question, no question.
Yeah.
But there has to be a difference in the way that the inspections are done.
Not
But-
just random. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just everyone be mindful, before you get your stuff. That's all.
We
Okay,
don't want somebody coming back and saying we got a lot of gall.
no.
But we
But
do.
I'm gonna shut it down, everybody. It was nice seeing you all. Hope everyone had a chance to learn something. Get out those tools, get out
much.
that strong back. Everyone's gonna be digging now.
Whoa.
Lots of people to visit 501 Harris Court and help out.
Carleen Avenue in Ottawa.
Okay,
Fox Farm.
Take care, everyone.
so
Right.
long all.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lori. Great meeting.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.